The story of the Assyrian Empire is one of the most fascinating chapters in world history. It is a story of rise, collapse, and rebirth, repeated many times over thousands of years. The Assyrians came from northern Mesopotamia, in the region between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, an area often called the cradle of civilization. The empire grew from a small trading city and eventually became one of the largest and most powerful empires of the ancient world. For many centuries, the Assyrians were known for their strong rulers, their carefully organized armies, their advanced administration, and their impressive art and architecture. Their empire went through three major phases: the Old Assyrian period, the Middle Assyrian period, and the New Assyrian or Neo-Assyrian Empire. Each phase saw changes in power, territory, and culture. Even after their empire fell, the Assyrians survived as a people, preserving their identity and traditions into the modern day. The earliest roots of Assyria begin around the 3rd millennium BCE. At this time, Mesopotamia was home to many city-states, such as Sumerian and Akkadian cities in the south and smaller settlements in the north. The Assyrians lived around a city called Ashur, also spelled Ashur, which was named after their main god. Ashur sat on an important trading route along the Tigris River, making it a convenient place for merchants to travel between Anatolia in the north and Mesopotamia in the south. The early city was not yet an empire. It was more like a small independent state ruled by local leaders who managed trade networks and religious affairs. During this period, Assyria often fell under the influence of larger powers. One of the first great empires to include Assyrian lands was the Akkadian Empire under Sargon of Akkad in the 24th century BCE. When the Akkadian Empire collapsed, the Assyrians regained independence, but they soon came under the influence of the third dynasty of Ur, also known as the Neo-Sumerian Empire. Throughout these centuries, the Assyrians learned from their neighbors. They adopted writing, laws, administrative systems, and religious traditions that helped shape their future. Even though Assyria was not yet strong enough to dominate the region, the foundations of the future empire were being built during these early times. The Old Assyrian period, which flourished around 2000 to 1700 BCE, was especially important for trade. Assyrian merchants created large trading colonies in Anatolia, especially in a city called Kanish, modern-day Kultepe in Turkey. These trading colonies were not military centers. They were business communities where Assyrians lived among local Anatolians for economic purposes. They brought tin and textiles from Assyria and exchanged them for silver and other goods. Thousands of clay tablets found at Kanish show contracts, letters, and records of deals, giving us detailed information about daily life. These tablets reveal that the Assyrians at this time were excellent traders, negotiators, and diplomats. Eventually, the old Assyrian system collapsed due to regional wars and the rise of new kingdoms in both Mesopotamia and Anatolia. Babylonia in the south, under kings like Hammurabi, became powerful and overshadowed Assyria for a time. But the old Assyrian period had set a pattern. Even when politically weak, the Assyrians were resourceful and skilled at surviving changing conditions. The Middle Assyrian period, roughly from 1400 to 1050 BCE, marked the moment when Assyria transformed from a small trading state into a powerful kingdom. This rise happened partly because the great powers around Assyria declined or struggled. The Mitanni kingdom, which had dominated northern Mesopotamia, began to weaken due to internal conflicts and pressure from the Hittites. This allowed Assyrian kings to expand their territory and finally assert independence. One of the first major Middle Assyrian kings was Ashur-rebelit I, 1353 to 1318 BCE. Under his leadership, Assyria broke free from the Mitanni and began to act like a true regional power. He established diplomatic relations with Egypt and other major kingdoms. Assyria was no longer a minor state but a recognized kingdom in the international world of the Late Bronze Age. Later kings, such as Adad-nirari I and Shalmaneser I, continued to strengthen and expand the kingdom. They conquered more lands in northern Mesopotamia and built fortresses to control trade routes. During this time, Assyria began developing the military strategies that would later make it famous. Assyrian armies used iron weapons earlier than many of their neighbors, giving them an advantage. They also began organizing troops into specialized units such as cavalry, chariot forces, and archers. One of the most accomplished Middle Assyrian rulers was Tukulti-Ninurta I, 1244 to 1208 BCE. He defeated Kassite Babylonia and even took the Babylonian king as a prisoner. He built a new capital city named Kar-Tukulti-Ninurta and expanded the empire farther than any earlier Assyrian ruler. His reign showed a new level of ambition and power, but it also showed how internal problems, including conflict within the royal family, could weaken the kingdom. Tukulti-Ninurta was eventually killed during a rebellion led by his own sons, and the empire entered a period of instability. Despite these struggles, the Middle Assyrian period left an important legacy. The administrative system became more organized, laws were written, and the Assyrian army became stronger. But after about 1050 BCE, a period of decline began. New threats appeared, including the Arameans, who migrated through the region. Political instability, combined with environmental and economic pressures, caused Assyria to shrink and lose much of its power. For about a century, Assyria was weakened and overshadowed, but this period did not last forever. When the empire rose again, it would do so with greater strength than ever before. The Neo-Assyrian Empire, lasting roughly from 911 to 609 BCE, was the greatest and most famous phase of Assyrian history. During these 3 centuries, Assyria built the largest empire the world had ever seen up to that time. It expanded across the Middle East, from Egypt in the west to Iran in the east, and from the Persian Gulf in the south to the mountains of Turkey and Armenia in the north. This empire required a powerful army, a sophisticated government, and skilled leaders, and the Assyrians developed all of these. One of the first strong kings of the Neo-Assyrian Empire was Ashurnasirpal II, 883 to 859 BCE. He reorganized the army, making it more professional and disciplined. He used military campaigns to expand Assyrian territory and to intimidate neighboring states. Ashurnasirpal II is often remembered for the harsh methods he used to keep control. Assyrian inscriptions describe punishments and brutality toward rebels meant to discourage resistance. Although these accounts may exaggerate, they reflect how the Assyrians used fear as a political tool. But Ashurnasirpal II was not only a warrior. He also built a magnificent new capital at Kalhu, also called Nimrud, decorating it with carved stone reliefs and grand palaces. His successor, Shalmaneser III, continued the expansion and fought battles against a coalition of kingdoms in the Levant. By this time, many states including Israel, Damascus, Tyre, and Sidon paid tribute to Assyria to avoid destruction. Tribute brought wealth into the empire, supporting further expansion and economic growth. After a short decline, the empire rose again under Tiglath-Pileser III, 745 to 727 BCE, one of the greatest kings in Assyrian history. He transformed the government, replacing old regional rulers with Assyrian officials loyal to the king. He reorganized the empire into provinces, each with its own governor and troops. This system prevented local revolts and kept the empire stable. In addition, he expanded further into the Levant, conquered parts of Babylonia, and reached the borders of Egypt. Under his rule, the Assyrian army became even more advanced, with better training, equipment, and logistics. He also introduced mass deportations, moving large populations from one region to another, to weaken local resistance and reduce rebellion. Although harsh, this policy helped maintain control over conquered lands. After Tiglath-Pileser III came Shalmaneser V and then Sargon II, 722 to 705 BCE, the founder of the Sargonid dynasty. Sargon II completed the conquest of the Kingdom of Israel and defeated many enemies in the region. He built a new capital city, Dur-Sharrukin, modern Khorsabad, filled with grand architecture. Although Sargon II was a strong king, he died in battle, which was considered a bad omen in Mesopotamian culture. But his son, Sennacherib, 705 to 681 BCE, restored stability and expanded Assyrian power even further. Sennacherib is one of the most well-known Assyrian kings. He moved the capital to Nineveh and turned it into a huge and beautiful city with parks, canals, and palaces. He also fought major wars, including a famous campaign against the Kingdom of Judah, where he besieged Jerusalem. Although his inscriptions describe surrounding the city, the biblical accounts describe a miraculous survival for the people of Judah. Whatever the exact truth, the campaign shows Assyria's power in the region. Sennacherib also destroyed Babylon after a rebellion, flooding it and reducing it to rubble, a decision that shocked many at the time. Later Assyrian kings tried to undo this act. Sennacherib's son, Esarhaddon, 681 to 669 BCE, rebuilt Babylon and adopted a more peaceful approach toward the city. He also did something no earlier Assyrian king had done. He conquered Egypt. This achievement showed just how far Assyrian power had spread. After his death, his son Ashurbanipal, 669 to 631 BCE, became king. Ashurbanipal is often remembered for his intelligence and his love of knowledge. He built a huge library in Nineveh, containing tens of thousands of clay tablets. This library preserved important works like the Epic of Gilgamesh and texts on medicine, astronomy, math, and religion. Under Ashurbanipal, the empire reached its cultural peak, but even during his reign, problems were brewing. His brother, appointed king of Babylon, rebelled, leading to years of civil war. After Ashurbanipal's death, the weakened empire fell quickly. Many enemies, Babylonians, Medes, Scythians, and others joined together against Assyria. In 612 BCE, Nineveh was captured and destroyed. By 609 BCE, the last Assyrian stronghold had fallen. The Neo-Assyrian Empire had collapsed completely. Although the Assyrians are often remembered for warfare, their empire was much more than armies and battles. They built impressive cities with strong walls, beautiful palaces, and magnificent temples. Art flourished in the form of stone reliefs showing kings, battles, hunting scenes, and ceremonies. These carvings were not only decoration, they told stories and celebrated the power of the king. Assyrian religion was deeply connected to politics. The god Ashura was the chief deity, and the king served as his representative on earth. This gave the king divine authority to wage war, expand the empire, and maintain order. Other gods, such as Ishtar, Nabu, and Ninurta, played important roles in daily life, agriculture, and war. Administration in the Assyrian Empire was complex and organized. The empire was divided into provinces, each with officials who collected taxes, managed land, and kept order. The Assyrians built roads that helped military and administrative communication. They used a messaging system similar to a postal service to carry information quickly across the empire. This efficient bureaucracy helped the empire survive for centuries, even during periods of internal conflict. The Assyrian economy depended on agriculture, trade, and tribute. Farmers grew barley, wheat, and dates. Traders exchanged goods with regions as distant as Egypt, Anatolia, and Iran. Tribute payment from conquered states brought wealth in the form of metals, livestock, luxury goods, and slaves. This wealth supported the army, funded construction projects, and enriched the royal court. The fall of the Neo-Assyrian Empire was sudden compared to its long history. Several factors contributed to its collapse. Constant warfare drained resources and exhausted the population. Harsh rule and heavy tribute demands created resentment among conquered peoples. Internal conflicts, especially the civil war between Ashurbanipal and his brother, weakened the state. When Assyria's enemies united, the empire did not have the strength to defend itself. In 612 BCE, a coalition of Babylonians and Medes captured Nineveh after a long siege. The destruction was so complete that the city was lost for centuries until its rediscovery in the modern era. By 609 BCE, the remaining Assyrian army was defeated. The empire had disappeared from the political map, replaced by the Neo-Babylonian Empire and other regional powers. Even though the empire fell, the Assyrian people did not vanish. They continued to live in Mesopotamia and other regions, maintaining their identity, language, and culture through the centuries. During later periods, they lived under Persian, Greek, Roman, and Arab rule, among others. Many Assyrians converted to Christianity early in the faith's history, forming important churches such as the Assyrian Church of the East and the Chaldean Catholic Church. Today, Assyrians live across the world, especially in Iraq, Syria, Iran, Turkey, the United States, and Europe. They preserve their ancient language, a form of Aramaic, cultural traditions, and community identity. Although they no longer have a political empire, their cultural legacy remains strong. Their art, literature, religion, and administrative innovations influenced many later civilizations. The rediscovery of Assyrian ruins in the 19th century sites like Nineveh, Nimrud, and Khorsabad revealed the richness of their history and helped the world understand how advanced and important the Assyrian Empire once was. The history of the Assyrian Empire is long, complex, and filled with dramatic changes. It began as a small city-state of traders and grew into one of the first true empires in world history. Through the Old, Middle, and Neo-Assyrian periods, the Assyrians showed remarkable resilience and adaptability. They built strong armies, efficient administrations, and magnificent cities. Their achievements in art, architecture, and literature shaped the civilizations that came after them. Although their empire eventually fell, the Assyrian people survived and continue to exist today, carrying forward one of the world's oldest living cultures.